Hey everybody, Antoni here with my review of Wagner's Tannhäuser with conductor Pietari Inkennen, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. This marks the second time I saw Kirsten Ham's production of Wagner's Tannhäuser at the Deutsche Oper Berlin because I wanted to see and hear Clay Hilley perform the role of Tannhäuser. I have been following Clay Hilley's career for quite some time, mostly by reading his biography and the roles that he's been specializing in. It seems to me that he has been conquering a lot of the Wagnerian tenor roles in opera houses all over America and Europe. And as I saw and heard him tonight as Tannhäuser, I can confidently state that his reputation was well earned. He had a voice that managed to be present all throughout the evening. He was able to sing over that orchestra, and he was able to launch at some blazing top notes with full abandon and full force. And he was able to characterize Tannhäuser as a man who has been conflicted by his passions and his duties, both in terms of finding love with Venus and his duties as a singer of the courts. However, more than anything, his vocal assets were at an all-time prime, especially considering that his voice had the sufficient amount of decibels to reach over that orchestra and do so with full force, full abandon, and in some moments, full-on ease. Yes, there were occasions where he sounded quite effortful, especially in his narration, Inbrunst in Herzen. And there were also times where he did resort to crooning, screaming, and producing hoarse tones. However, the main component that made him sing over that orchestra was he was able to sufficiently cover his chest tones well from bottom to top. And when he covered those chest tones and covered his top notes, it was able to make me realize just how much of a fully dedicated musician Mr. Hilley was. Sure, I still do miss those rounder, richer, and more incisive voices found in Lauritz Melchior, Gunnar Grarud, Thorsten Ralph, Max Lorenz, Seth Svanholm, Ludwig Sutthaus, Günther Treptow, Hans Beurer, Ramon Vinay, Bernd Aldenhoff, James King, John Vickers, Jess Thomas, and Spas Venkov. However, Clay Hilley was in a class of his own as he was able to use his covered chest tones and covered top notes and even blazing top notes to just make the role of Tannhäuser his own. And even though he did have some mannerisms that bordered on the hammy and also had some moments where he sounded kind of hoarse and had moments where he could have used a lot more covering in his chest tones and top notes, he was still a thoroughly engaging singing actor. And I'd also love to hear and see him in roles outside the Wagner repertoire, such as Herodes, Aegeus, the Emperor, Otello, Radames, Don Alvaro, and German. Those are roles that I would love to see and hear him in, and lest I forget about the drum major from Berg's Wozzeck. That's also a role that is also very great for him, and even Sanson and Aîné, two French roles that are absolutely nice for Mr. Hilley. The possibilities for Mr. Hilley are absolutely endless, and he definitely struck a strong first impression on me tonight in his performance as Tannhäuser. So here's also hoping that he will continue to develop his technique in the right way, keep on covering his chest tones and top notes well, so that he can make sure that his voice fully builds on more power and more sheen for many years to come. Kieran Carell continues to improve vocally as Walter von der Vogelweide, and his nasality has been gone. His voice sounds a little bit clearer than when I first heard him 6 to 7 months ago, and he was definitely building up on some really great material. And his performance tonight as Walter von der Vogelweide proved that he was able to sing with finesse and sing with sufficient charm. Yes, I still miss that additional roundness and richness and additional musicianship found in René Collo and Siegfried Jerusalem, because I definitely love them a lot more as Spinto / full lyric tenors than the Wagnerian tenor roles that they attempted much later in their careers, because they were fine musicians as Walter von der Vogelweide, and there were also roles that I appreciated them a lot more in. However, with Kieran Carell, he was able to do a good job in making the role of Walter von der Vogelweide his own, and here's also hoping that he will continue to grow a lot more in core, grow a lot more in covered chest tones, and grow a lot more in great musicianship. Because as I stated before, Kieran Carell has amazing material to work with. He just needs to keep on developing in the right way so that he can conquer those lyric tenor roles with ease and more charisma. Jörg Schörner continues to shine as Heinrich der Schreiber. Yes, there have been fuller sounding voices found in Franz Klarwein and Georg Pascuda, just to name a few, because they actually had finer and stronger instruments to make the role of Heinrich der Schreiber their own. However, with Jörg Schörner, he also had great musicianship and an equally dashing and strong stage presence to own the role of Heinrich der Schreiber and do so with aplomb and nobility, thus making him a fine singing actor that he's always been. Tobias Kehrer stole the show tonight as Landgraf Hermann, and even when he had his cough, even when he had his moments of hoarseness, he was still able to maintain his basso profondo / basso cantante voice intact and do so with nobility, fortitude, and awesome virility. My eyes and ears could not be taken away from him, and that was just how captivating he was as a singing actor, especially when it came to embodying this kingly figure and doing so with nobility and virility. So my hat definitely has to go to Tobias Kehrer for being such a trooper as well as an equally fine singing actor that he has always been, and for also being consistent in his musicianship and consistent with his strong stage presence. Joel Allison also grew stronger as a singer as Bitterolf. Yes, the likes of Franz Krass can never ever be forgotten, especially considering that he is my #1 favorite singer for Bitterolf. However, Joel Allison's musicianship and his virile stage presence are absolutely amazing assets that have put him on the map as an involving singing actor, and he was able to own Bitterolf's solo Heraus zum Kampfe with pure abandon and with sufficient interest. Gerard Ferreras was equally virile and equally handsome as Reinmar von Sveta. The memories I've had of listening to Gerd Ninstedt and Theo Adam in this small role can never be forgotten. But Gerard Ferreras continues to show how strong he has been as a singing actor, all thanks to his basso cantante voice that has a lot of potential to keep on growing in the right direction. And he also had a tall and commanding stage presence to boot to make this particular night come to life, which he did outstandingly well in. Samuel Hasselhorn brought in sensitivity, nobility, and charm as Wolfram von Eschenbach. He was able to sing this role with a lot of sensitivity that I felt for his character. I felt for what he was going through at this very moment, and he was able to grow as a singer throughout the opera. Yes, he did have a bit of a shaky start, considering that his lyric baritone voice needed some time to warm up. But when it warmed up in the third act of the opera, it was able to have a good number of colors, a good number of tones, especially in his solo, O du mein holder Abendstern, which he sang with pathos, sang with beauty, and sang with grace. There was no barking to be found, no scratchiness in his voice, and whatever vocal flaws that I've had with Mr. Hasselhorn, such as the tendency to be nasal, the tendency to be masky, and the tendency to not sound as deep like a true baritone should, they could be forgiven. And I do hope that he continues to cover his chest tones well, because who I have in my ears as my personal favorite Wolfram von Eschenbachs are the likes of Herbert Janssen, Karl Kronenberg, Hermann Prey, Jaro Prohaska, and Alfred Pöhl, especially where the likes of Alfred Pöhl and Tom Krause are concerned, because they had beautiful, virile, and strong baritone voices that could bring out the manliness in Wolfram, but also that sensitivity that defines him. There is no doubt that Samuel Hasselhorn did sing with sufficient sensitivity and sufficient charm to make this character come to life, which he did very well. However, I still want him to grow in the right direction, especially when it comes to fully developing his chest tones and fully developing a much chestier tone as a true baritone, because he has great material to work with. I just don't want to see him squander his talents. Elisabeth Taiga definitely made a lot of great vocal magic as both Venus and Elisabeth. She was good as Venus, but she was in her element as Elisabeth. I say that she was good as Venus because while she was able to hit those notes well, and while she was able to hit her signature blazing top notes with full abandon, and she also looked the part in a convincing manner, all thanks to how she played up the glamour and the seductiveness of this role, I still miss that extra steeliness, and I still miss that extra metal and volcanic lava in the voice. Because who I have in my ears as my favorite Venuses of all time are Annie Konecny, Helena Braun, Erna Schlüter, Margaret Harshaw, Marjorie Lawrence, Rossi-Deli, Martha Mödel, Gertrud Grob-Prandtl, Astrid Varnay, Irma Esenyi, Ludmila Vorakova, Ingrid Steger, Sigrid Kiel, Danica Mastilovic, Gwyneth Jones, Grace Bumbry, Janice Martin, Isolde Eichlepp, and even Gabriele Schnaut. And if we're talking mezzo-sopranos singing Venus, I could never go wrong with the likes of Kerstin Thorborg, Blanche Thebaum, Irene Dallas, Nell Rankin, Rita Gore, and my number one all-time favorite, Christa Ludwig. Whether they be sopranos like Astrid Varnay, Rossi-Deli, Annie Konecny, Margaret Harshaw, Helena Braun, Erna Schlüter, and Marjorie Lawrence, or mezzo-sopranos like Blanche Thebaum, Christa Ludwig, Nell Rankin, Rita Gore, and even Regina Resnick, and lest I forget about the Zwischenfach singers of Grace Bumbry and Waltraud Meyer. Those singers were the ones that I've always preferred more as Venus, because they not only had the top notes, especially where Astrid Varnay and Margaret Harshaw are concerned, but also the chest tones and that overall metal and lava pouring out of their throats that I love in many a singer tackling Venus. So with Elisabeth Taiga as Venus, yes, she did fall short as to what I really love for Venus, but she was able to act the part sufficiently well, and she had sufficient vocal resources to make the role come to life. But as I stated before, she owned the role of Elisabeth. And she is definitely no stranger to playing all of these virginal young women, such as Elisabeth from Tannhäuser, Zenta from Der Fliegende Holländer, and Chrysothemis from Elektra. And these are roles that are tailor-made for someone as wonderful as Elisabeth Taiga. I always insist that she is more of a spinto soprano, or if you're talking more on the dramatic side, a jugendlich dramatischer Sopran, because she had those easy and blazing top notes, and she had this sort of fragility and high sensitivity about her voice and manner that made her very convincing in roles such as Elisabeth and Chrysothemis, and she was just able to imbue this role with sufficient virginal nobility and beauty that I was practically eating out of the palms of her hands every time she appeared as Elisabeth. Her renditions of Dich teure Halle and Allmächtige Jungfrau were wonderfully sung. Yes, I could argue that her voice could have benefited from a lot more vocal creaminess, especially found in certain singers such as Ingrid Bjoner, Marianne Schech, Ingeborg, Helen Traubel, Kirsten Flagstad, Greb Rövenstein, Helga Dernesch during her soprano years, Katharina Legenza, Elizabeth Connell, and my personal all-time favorites being Elisabeth Grümer and Zena Jurinats. But I digress. Elisabeth Taiga as Elisabeth is a role that she thoroughly owned, way more than Venus, and Elisabeth is a role that defines Elisabeth Taiga so convincingly well as a singing actress, all thanks to her blazing top notes, the sensitivity that she was able to provide with this character, and the grace and beauty that she was able to imbue so well. Therefore, for all of Elisabeth Taiga's efforts for both as Venus and especially as Elisabeth, she deserves 8 pluses all around. Lilith Daftian also has to receive a good amount of kudos for her contribution as the shepherd boy. Her voice was sufficiently beautiful and sufficiently lovely to fit this role so well. Yes, it could be argued that she could have benefited from a lot more vocal creaminess, a la in voices such as Elsa Margareta Gardelli and Gundula Janowitz. However, I digress, as Lilith Daftian was able to own the role of the shepherd boy, all thanks to her peerless musicianship and her close attention to detail with the score, and how she was able to make this role come to life with sufficient vocal beauty and loveliness. So overall, the singing was quite good all around. The standouts for me tonight, especially among the men, were Clay Hilley as Tannhäuser and Tobias Kira as Landgraf Hermann. These two were able to strengthen tonight's performance of Tannhäuser so outstandingly well that they deserve all the kudos I could give them. I also have to give a fair amount of credit to Samuel Hasselhorn for what he was able to accomplish as Wolfram von Eschenbach. Yes, his voice does need a lot more growth and depth and richness, especially considering that he tackled this iconic baritone role, but he still had sufficient sensitivity and sufficient emotional investment to make the role of Wolfram von Eschenbach his own. And especially when it comes to the women of tonight, both Elisabeth Taiga and Lilith Daftian were able to produce vocal magic as Venus and Elisabeth, in Elisabeth Taiga's case, especially as Elisabeth, and as the shepherd boy in Lilith Daftian's case. All the singers managed to give it their all, and they were able to make this evening quite worthwhile. The conducting done by Pietari Inkinen was quite well done. Yes, there were moments where he kind of dragged. However, those moments could be forgivable as he was able to keep the tension going. He was able to just make sure that everyone was collaborating well, although he could use a lot more crispness in his conducting. But other than that, he was still musically involved, and of course, the chorus and orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin were reliable as always. So, with Clay Hilley making a strong first impression on me as Tannhäuser, I can safely attest that this was a tenor I need to keep looking out for. He owned the role of Tannhäuser tonight, and he carried the entire performance at the palms of his hands. And he was also backed up by some equally strong singers, including Samuel Hasselhorn as Wolfram, Elisabeth Taiga as both Venus and Elisabeth, and Tobias Kira as Landgraf Hermann. He was able to make the evening so memorable that I cannot wait to see what the future has in store for Mr. Hilley. And for those of you who caught this performance of Tannhäuser at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what did you think of it? Did you enjoy Clay Hilley as Tannhäuser? Was there another singer who stole his thunder, whether it be Samuel Hasselhorn as Wolfram, or Tobias Kira as Landgraf Hermann, or Elisabeth Taiga as Venus and Elisabeth? Or did you feel like the singing was not really to your liking? Please comment below and let me know. Well, that's it for my review of Wagner's Tannhäuser at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, starring Clay Hilley as Tannhäuser. Tune in tomorrow for my review of Wagner's Der Fliegende Holländer, starring Egil Schillens as the Dutchman. So until then, good night, everybody.